All right. Got two new people that have never done this, Janet and Joe. So how it works on the opening is we roll to see who gets to go first, or the order of the introductions. Just say who you are, what you do, etc. And just a simple D20, and you can use the text channel right above the voice one here.
Like an idiot, but how do you do the D20 roll on this thing? Slash roll?
Slash roll space and then a 1D20.
Oh no, critical fail.
Alright, so Joe's going last. Who's going first here? Looks like Todd, I think.
Am I the winner chicken dinner?
I think you're just making sure we got all the rolls here. Andrew, did you roll? Oh, he's not back yet. Well,
I'm sorry?
did you roll?
Yeah, I rolled before you did, Pex. I got an 8.
You are on the game here. Look at that. Alright.
Hey, this ain't my first rodeo.
No, it's not. Alright, so there's the order. So, Mr. Todd, whenever you're ready.
All right. Well, first of all, welcome everyone to the RPG Breakfast Talk. My name is Todd. I run a site called Hexpress. I'll throw a link in the chat where I write and also publish videos talking about role-playing games. That's all for me. And I also help out here at the tavern.
I am Pex, the Tavern Custodian. I do a lot of behind-the-scenes work at the tavern, mainly scheduling these live chats that we do and plotting little evil ideas in Tinker's ear. That's it for me.
I'm Andrew Ragland. I'm with FASA. Yes, that FASA. I'm line developer for 1879, which is a steampunk role-playing game. It is the successor to both Earth Dawn and to Shadowrun, because we sold off Shadowrun about 20 years ago, and that left a hole in our cosmology. So we now have a steampunk game instead of a cyberpunk game. And you can find my latest line developer blog and our website at the link I just dropped into the chat.
Cool. I'm Janet, the co-founder of World Anvil, and actually I have Demetrius with me, who is also the co-founder of World Anvil. We did it together! And World Anvil is a world-building platform, kind of like a wiki on steroids, that helps you world build any kind of world in any kind of genre. And it's used by a lot of novelists and RPG players and DMs and game developers.
Hello there.
Hey guys, and I'm Joe the Lawyer. Just a dude who plays D&D. I don't make anything. I'm the token gamer here, I guess. The token just guy who plays.
You have a blog. I know you do.
I do, but I only really use it anymore for linking to my podcast I do. Joe the Lawyer's Not So Wondrous Imaginings podcast and my Wondrous Imaginings blog. So yeah, that's true. I do have a couple things out there. So
Regular guy, he says. Well, we got some fun topics today. I'll put them here in chat, so you don't have to scroll up, but you may have to scroll up in a bit here once things get busier. So mainly mapping and cartography. Anybody want to pick one of those to start us off with?
Well, we were talking about world building in the common room right before this got started. And so that kind of goes into organizing your game world information and so forth.
Yeah, which is kind of us, isn't it?
Hey.
So, sorry, go ahead.
No, you're batting lead off here. You've got the world building site.
Oh, blimey. All right. Well, yeah, I think mapping is a place that a lot of people start with world building. A lot of people think very visually about it, and instead of starting with a species or starting with a theme hook or something, they'd rather start with a map. So we see that a lot, that a lot of people will start their world by uploading a map on World Anvil, and they'll go. That's how they explore. That's how they go through. They Oh my gosh, Kaora is here.
Hello.
Hi, Kaora. Kaora is a map maker extraordinaire, by the way. He's one of our Anvilites. I'm very happy to see him in the room. That's all.
And probably the person to talk about mapping and cartography, to be
Yeah,
fair.
absolutely. So yeah, that's what we've often seen, is that people will start out with their map and then they drop pins. That's how they start creating articles, is really from the geographical features, and that's how they spin all of their world building. It's like the candy floss that spins up from the sugar of the map, basically.
Which it makes kind of sense. As Devon said the other day when she had her interview at D&D, it's nice to put things into maps because they sprout your imagination and they help you start creating. Of course, you run the danger of running amok and not really creating anything at the end of the day, or at least creating a lot of bits and bobs without any focus. But in truth, maps and visualization always helps you getting started, I guess.
Yeah, they can be really inspiring.
Right. I think in today's society we're a lot more visual than we were, and I think starting with a map is a great starting point. And then you can fill in how A connects to B and Z connects to A, et cetera, et cetera. And what you guys are doing over World Anvil, that just helps that immensely.
We started with a map for the Grosvenor world for 1879, which is the world on the other side of the wormhole from the portal in Greenwich Park. Just deciding to put the portal in Greenwich Park, that gives us a map of Europe, and we can look at how the political and military focus sharpens. But then we started with a topographic map of the new world, and okay, this is the point where the wormhole lands and the British Empire has their initial foothold. That gave us a vista out into this world to think about the expansion of the empire, where the settlements are going to go. You know, we can see there are rivers here, there are mountains there. Logically, the settlements must follow the water, so on and so forth. We had a mountain that sort of stuck out. It was the tallest peak in the mapped area. We used a generator to create this map, and so this mountain became important because it was such a prominent physical feature. The map itself inspired a good deal of our world building in that region.
It is interesting because in the real world building is based on the topography, but when you are world building, it kind of happens exactly the opposite, because you create essentially a river, and then that will create the borders that you will be creating. So maps can work as an inspiration to create based on them, but also they can work exactly the opposite way around, like being an inspiration of what the world will be based on the map, not what the map defines for the world. That makes sense.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
I see a sort of synergy between the two, where as you start building your world, you have some ideas of what you want the world to be like. You've started with an idea of a genre, if nothing else. Excuse me. This is going to be a high fantasy world. This is going to be a steampunk world. This is going to be a cyberpunk world, whatever. And then you have the map that gives you, if nothing else, the necessary constraints. If you've decided that there must be a river going in this direction, well, obviously you must have a valley, you must have a channel for that river, you have to have mountains to have runoff, and so it builds your landscape. Once you've got those mountains, you obviously have a geographical barrier, and so that's going to be an easy place to put a border between this nation and that nation.
Very true.
As the
Well-
token player here, I guess you could say, I'm looking at World Anvil, right? So I'm looking at your website and the program here, and I'm wondering, does it? I'm only familiar with programs like Hexographer, Dungeonographer, Cityographer, right? And I'm familiar with what's it, Roll20. And
Yeah.
so what I do is I make something Hexographer, I throw it up on Roll20, I put the Fog of War or whatever on there, and I reveal it slowly as they go across the screen. Does your program do all of that too?
Not at all. In fact, because there are so many nice programs that allow you to do map making, and there are so amazing tools, in fact, like Roll20 to do VTT, we do not even touch on these spaces. What we do is that we allow you to record and document everything that you need to know about your world. So imagine it like your database. So if Roll20 is your table, and Hexographer is your map or your map making tool, World Anvil is the place for you to be able to go there, sit and write all the documentation, all the information about all the locations of your world. And of course, take that map if you create it in Hexographer, if Kaora or anybody else did it for you, or you made it on paper, upload it there and create an alternative navigation for your world that will allow you very quickly and easily access this information. And I think that for us as world builders, because we are more world builders than we are cartographers or map makers, the important thing is to understand the nuances of the world. Like the map, as we said here, is very important because it gives you context. I mean, to be fair, guys, we as people who are creators kind of take a little bit of how do you call that, joy into the idea that we are gods. We both create the world that people will inhabit, and we also create everybody in it. So I think that effectively Gold Anvil will just allow you to put your ideas down there and show off how it works. I think that somebody just pasted an image that shows pretty much what you can do with a map.
That's part of our interactive maps. Yeah, that's one of the gifts from our interactive maps. So basically you can drop pins in. The pins will lead to articles that will display on the left-hand side. So it's a really great way to have a learning curve for your players, but also
for yourself as well,
and for yourself, just to sort of keep track of where everything is. But with some of our more pro tiers, you can do things like you can have secret layers. So you can have your own DM layer for your own reference that might have, I don't know, like encounters that you've planned or major things in the plot of your story. And then you can have a player's layer, which they can see, which will have, for example, the tracking the story so far.
That's pretty neat. You know, I'm looking at this and I can't quite tell if it's handmade or not, which raises the question. Being an old bastard, I guess, I tend to like to do things by hand, at least the first draft, and I'll maybe transfer it over into Hexographer. Does anybody else do that still, or is everybody just straight up electronic everything these days?
To be fair, that is my map. Funny enough, I made it by hand. And and I think that is beautiful that to make hunts by hand, because going directly digital, and something I said to my students as well when I was doing design, going digital really rips you off so much creativity. It's good to at least start on the pen and paper, because the rubber and the pen and the pencil has a feeling that you cannot get in digital. The moment you go there, you get so invested into your map, and it's better to start with something you can just scrap very easily and restart. That's what my feeling is, at least.
I agree. I think that Craig Brasco is an artist. I think you guys probably know him. Everybody here probably knows him. Great artist. And he teaches art and all that. And I was talking to him a few years ago, and he was doing something for me, and it was beautiful. And I said, "Did you do this by hand?" He says, "No, it's all computer." I said, "Wow, is that a thing that everybody does?" He goes, "Pretty much, yeah. That's what everyone's doing now. It's computer art." And I said, "Isn't something being lost?" You know, because for me, there's a direct connection between my brain, my fingers, right down my arm to the pencil. You know what I mean? And it just feels right. Whereas if I'm click, 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 I'm not really manipulating anything as a direct connection. If that makes any sense whatsoever.
Yeah, it does. For 1879, we went with hand-drawn maps in black and white because we wanted to give the players the feel of preliminary field surveys. This is a frontier world. The British Empire has just started expanding into this new world. And so the maps that the players are able to get a hold of are coming in from the military field surveys, and these are these hand-drawn pen and ink maps that survey officers have brought in, and they haven't yet gone over to one of the big publishers to get cleaned up and tidied up and neatly labeled and so forth. They're kind of sketchy.
I think there is beauty in both, and I think that starting with pen and paper is beautiful, but depending on the kind of feeling and the kind of spirit you want to convey with your map, going digital sometimes might be good. Like if your map is supposed to inspire awe and like to be like a vibrant colored display of the locations, not even effectively a map that you can drag essentially a ruler there and see the actual distance, but more of actually showing the beauty of location or to pinpoint the major landmarks. This is might be something you want to do in digital, but pencil maps also have like beautiful, like this handcrafted kind of feeling.
Yeah.
That having been said, yeah, there is a balance there. We're working on a map book of London for the game world, and those maps are all being produced digitally. We want them to look very polished, very technically proficient, like the sort of maps that would be published in the late 1800s, full color, etc., etc. So there we've gone with the digital. With the frontier world, we've gone with the hand-drawn pen and ink, and it's all about really the experience that we're delivering to the players. What sort of feeling do we want to engender in the players as they see these maps?
Interesting you say that. Yeah.
Good.
It's very interesting you say that, because we went the other day on the Kew Gardens and there was an exhibition about the architects of the Victorian era.
Yeah.
And what these people were doing with pen and paper is jaw-dropping. And by jaw-dropping, I mean I have seen digital maps that they are like
Less
shadows,
detailed, yeah,
exactly,
and less
compared
perfect,
to this,
yeah.
because the Victorians were in fact so pedantic and so almost anal,
precise
about essentially these kind of things.
Well, touching on this, Todd, you do a lot of hexcrawl mapping, don't you? Or you play on hex maps mainly?
Yeah, I do. But I actually draw my own maps, and then I'll overlay hexes on top of it. I have been doing a lot of drawing direct digitally, but I do like to go back and do actually conventional pencil and paper, and also watercolor that I like to try. But I'm so inexpert at it that for a lot of the work, I happen to have an iPad Pro with an Apple Pencil, and it works great for using Procreate or something else to go in there and sketch out and add details and keep everything nice and separate through layers that allow me to not have to throw away a lot of maps. If I start to goof on one layer, I can erase it and start over, which I find very helpful. But I do really appreciate, and my goal is to go back to doing more conventional pencil, paper, pen work and then digitize it. But for right now, the Apple Pad plus pencil has been a boon for me when map making.
Well, on that, do you see an application for like a traditional setting or world map in a hexcrawl map in the virtual setting?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Because there's different layers, so that the players may have access to a non-hex map. So my player handout map right now is not a hex map for them. It is a drawn map that represents a physical map that they have in their possession. And then I use the hexcrawl map for me, the one where I'm basically more interested in just the symbology and what's generally in each hex for myself. They don't generally have access to that because that's not knowledge that they have. They have this map that they have a general, if they want to figure out distance and stuff, they have to figure it out with ruler and whatnot like they would normally. And the actual hex map is just for me.
Very cool. So I think one of our things on our agenda here was going pro or semi-pro and monetizing this. So how does Janet and Dimitri, how does somebody go from a nobody to a somebody?
I just missed the end of that. How does somebody go from
A nobody to a somebody using tools like this and etc.?
Well, I mean, World Anvil was one of the reasons we made it is because we think world building is really important, and that includes map making and all the other aspects of world building. And we feel like it's an art, and people who are serious about their art and put serious time in should get paid for that art. So there's loads of ways that one can monetize with World Anvil. I don't want to bore you all and go into them, but it includes things like Patreon rewards, that kind of stuff.
Effectively, we're trying to create a platform that people who world build, as the people, for example, that sit around the table, or people who are having a publication, can make money out of the art of world building. And that means effectively having the ability to manipulate who's watching what, who have access to what, and in very great detail. In fact, that's something we pride ourselves on, and essentially providing something that we haven't had before. So to give you an example, when my introduction to world building in full was when I've read Greenwood's Forgotten Realms campaign setting. And it was really beautiful. It was a very nice book, but in fact, when you were playing in a session, you would go in there and you say, okay, I need to find about symbols. So you have to remember the page and go there and read about it and find whatever you wanted. In World Anvil, you can do that by just writing 3 letters. And this means that World Anvil can be an alternative to the way that people navigate through any written world for any game or publication, or even your players when you play. And the way you monetize that, you essentially make it private, and then you say you can be a subscriber, you can pay to the company, not us, whatever X amount of money, or we can give it for free for you if you buy our book. And you have access to a very quick way of accessing all the information, and also a way to navigate it via a map or via other ways that we have in World Anvil.
Yeah.
So essentially, exactly the same as somebody starting a blog or a podcast or a vlog, but just more on the world building side of things. So I think that's a new niche, and that's fascinating to me, actually.
In fact, we have many people who have vlogs and blogs and podcasts that use World Anvil to monetize that. So, for example, you have people who have podcasts and say to their essentially subscribers or patrons, if you come in World Anvil, we can make you a subscriber to thank you for your patronage.
You can then check out all of the players' private journals that they write about the characters in the downtime. You can have priority access to stuff, and some podcasts even write short stories set in the world that are
only accessible for people who are their listeners and subscribers.
Exactly. So we've seen this with a podcast model. We've seen it with a live play, video models as well. People really using World Anvil to have more integration with the show, content, with the world building.
Yeah, more content for their essentially private patrons, subscribers,
and a space for their community as well.
Yes.
It does sound interesting. It is a new niche. It sounds like people have never thought about it before. Where did you guys get the idea? I mean, what sparked this initial idea? Where did you see the need?
So, I was trying to finish a novel, which I have now finished, fortunately, and I was having the hardest time keeping track of my world building because I'm quite chaotic. And so I'd have I would have a map written on the back of a piece of sheet music, and then I'd have an idea written on another piece of paper, and then I also had this Google Doc which was 30 pages long and completely useless because I couldn't ever find anything in it that I needed when I needed it. And so I had this big epic fantasy novel, I couldn't keep track of anything, and Dimitri was like, I can make you something for that. So World Anvil, the first iteration of it, was made for me as a present, best present I've ever got, to help me organize my novel. And as we chatted with Dimitri, with other people and our other friends who are RPG players, and I'm also an RPG player, they were like, I want in on that. I need that. I need this thing. And that's really how it was born. It was born from this need to keep track of things. And there have been some kind of iterations of things like World Anvil before, but they've never been as complete.
I think that the difference, to be clear, things like World Anvil in its initial stages were there. For example, Obsidian Portal was something like that. And my idea was Obsidian Portal is really cool, but it's first of all not specialized enough. It's literally just a wiki, and it does not
Doesn't
offer.
go far enough.
It doesn't offer the tools that somebody needs. And
Yeah.
then my next step was, okay, this is for the amateur. This is for the RPG player who plays around the table with his friends and he wants to grab some information. How can I take this and literally help the people out in the industry, help people who really want to monetize and to make essentially a living in the new kind of economy we have, which is not a big company economy like TSR used to be, but it's essentially people like Kiora, people like Devon Rue, people like small publishers that really want to offer a good deal to the people around them in order to make them essentially come to their side. And that's how we started. We started by saying, you know what? We have to find ways for these people to be able to do what they want and make their dreams come true. That's how we started. And we say, you know what? I'm going to create the third alternative, not a book, not a PDF, but a digital way that people can subscribe to or give it for free to advertise themselves, in fact, in order to offer to their customers and to their fans a different way of approaching their creations. That was the idea.
You know what's interesting about that? You mentioned starting with writing a novel. You guys know Raymond Feist. He wrote the Rift War saga back in the 90s. Thomas Pug, Colgan, and all those guys. And it was basically a novel series, and he's written probably 20-some books at this point. But it was based on his old RPG days in the late 70s in college. And it was based in the world of Macamia. Now, I was on a listserv with this guy 20 years ago. And I talked to him about how do you write? How do you keep track of everything you're writing? He says, back then, he said something kind of revolutionary, weird to me. He had an Apple setup, big Apple fan. He had double screens, and he had one screen with all his notes on it. And on the other screen, he'd have what he was typing in the novel, and he'd go back and forth from screen to screen. And in addition to that, he had like 3-4 boxes of old game notes and game material that was all on paper that he was into some never-ending process of trying to scan in. And I'm thinking myself, as you mentioned, that this would have been perfect for him 20, 25 years ago. You know, it would have been a fantastic resource.
I think that we all found ourselves as game masters at some point struggling with like piles of paper on our side behind our very small area of our DM screen, trying to remember where we left this amazing note or where we kept this idea. Because that was my problem. My problem was like I had so many ideas and I continuously lost them. Like I had so great ideas and I was like, it's out of my mind now, forgotten completely. Or a player would say to me something like, oh yeah, enter this place. What is the name of this barman? And I was like, his name is Tom. And then the next day it will be Kieran because I forgot that his name was Tom. Well, Dan will essentially just give me the idea of like, you know what? If I make in the game people to be able to very quickly write notes, which we've done, that will solve this problem. And that will solve the problem for losing your notes and losing your ideas. I mean, didn't you have the same thing as well, like losing your notes in game or before the game?
Constantly. What's the guy's name? For some reason, I forget the names, and then I go back to old TV shows. I named 2 people just the other night, Lenny and Squiggy, for Christ's sakes. You know?
The worst is when you're like, oh yeah, his name was George, and someone's
got the beard.
Up, actually, I think you'll find his name was Boris. And you're like, crap, they were listening, crap.
He's got the beard and funny hat. You know that guy, right?
Right, exactly.
Yeah, I take notes in a word processor while I'm GMing. I've been running a campaign of Earth Dawn for 26 years.
Wow.
And several years ago, I set up a wiki in order to keep track of the game. What I do is I drop my GM notes in as journal entries for game days, and then hyperlink it all out to pages for the NPCs and the places and so forth. So if somebody goes back to a location they haven't been to for a couple of years, I can go into the wiki, pull it up, and go, oh yeah, the shopkeeper's name is Henry. And Henry has a small dog that was really annoying. Okay, got it.
That is a great way of doing it. And in fact, that is something you can do in World Anvil. What you cannot do in wikis is to make it some of that public based on what your players know and some of that private and also to have secrets that only a specific amount of players will be able to have. In a wiki, if you publish a page, you publish a page. In Gold Anvil, I can have one page, and in the same page itself, even if without actually hiding the whole page, I can have, for example, notes specifically for Janet saying, you know what, everybody knows about this academy, but Janet also knows that there is an X person, or there is essentially a book specifically hidden in there because her account has access to that secret. And that is actually quite cool. I mean, I'm using it in my games, and I find it quite cool. That's pretty much it.
I'm curious to know, since you guys have actual experience with this, people that aren't quote-unquote computer savvy, how bad or how good is the learning curve for jumping in on something like this? If you've never done it before, you've always done things by hand.
Hard. I think. I mean, that is the fair truth. We are trying to make it simplified and easier, but the truth of the matter is that if you are not technology savvy, World Anvil is literally like saying to somebody who wants to calculate how much 2 and 2 and give him a supercomputer. So here you are, find a way to do it. And also, by the way, you have to type everything with your hands tied behind your back.
You have to code it in Fortran.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I personally disagree, and the reason I disagree is because I am not at all computer savvy. So Dimitri sees World, and this is a little bit of a concept thing. Dimitri sees World Anvil as this massive super multi-tool that can do everything, and it is. But I don't use World Anvil like that. I use World Anvil to organize the background of my books. So I don't use all the functionality. I only use the functionality that I need to use.
So it's the equivalent of like a smartphone. Somebody can use it to check their email or their messages or their Facebook, and then you got people that can code on their phone. So it offers both.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So, for example, I don't code my own character sheets, and I haven't done CSS to make my world look exactly as I want it to. But you can. I can't because I don't have those skills. But it is possible, and people do it. So there are different levels of
interaction.
Interaction. Like, I can use it for my uses, and it's fantastic, and it does everything that I want it to do. And somebody who wants to go deeper into it can go deeper into it, and it has that functionality as well. So the basic learning curve is fine. We do want to make it easier by doing more tutorial videos. We are working on it. But if you want to go deep, it's harder, I would say.
Janet, let me chase that just a second here, if you don't mind.
Please.
You came to World Anvil from building a novel. What package were you using to write your novel before World Anvil?
So I don't write in World Anvil. I write in Google Docs. It's perfectly serviceable. And I was using Google Docs and Google Sheets to organize my world building content. And organize is a word I use very loosely.
Okay.
So it was systematic, but because I couldn't integrate anything, it meant that I would have sort of different versions of things down the page. So fundamentally, I had a document that disagreed with itself. Very hard to write from.
All right.
I think that many people come from the world of Scrivener in World Anvil as well. Yeah. And I think that Scrivener is a great tool for the idea of actually structuring chapters and moving them around.
Yeah, for novel architecture, it's great.
Yeah, and I know that there are many people who try to world build in Scrivener as well. And it does have, and sorry guys, I'm trying to be completely impartial here. It does have its goods and it does have its bads as a tool. It's a tool that I studied in order to effectively do what I've done in World Anvil. Scrivener is good for architecture when the architecture is hierarchical. But worlds are not hierarchical. Worlds tend to go tangential very quickly, and also to have a lot of information who will be remotely linked with each other without having to effectively be underneath a very well-constructed tree. And that is the difference between linking things in, for example, a wiki, because wikis do in fact do good systems of documents that can link to everything around them without having to care about architecture. While Scrivener is not able to. What World Anvil goes there to add on top of that is the ability to understand the type of document, because in a wiki, each document is just a document. In World Anvil, a document is a species document, and the fact that it's a species document or a nation or a location or an item gives to the actual document special properties. That means that we can track more information about it. Like, for example, you can go to your location and say that the people presently in this location, the characters presently are these 10 people. So you can track people around your world and know where they are and know where they've been and what their story were. Not go into timelines or other things that wikis don't have, in fact.
Now, how about a guy like me, all right? I generally go to the table purposefully without any electronic devices or computers. Some of the players have it, the younger ones, the older ones don't. By younger, I mean there's a 16-year-old girl we play with, and they guys that is about late 30s, and everyone else is like in their 40s or past it, right? Now, what I do is I'll do a lot of game prep on my computer, typing up things or whatever, tables, charts, ideas, whatever the case may be, and then I bring everything in paper to the game table, and I prefer it that way on purpose. Maybe I'm a Luddite, I don't know. But how does this program that you're talking about, you help in that regard? Does it, or is it really its greatest functionality as an interactive tool at the table with everybody there?
Well, I have used Golden Anvil both ways, in fact. I too find sometimes that screens can be distracting on the table, and there were sessions that I said to my players purposely, do not bring devices. Because I know that sometimes you're not going to get stuck writing there, you're going to get stuck reading something and you go somewhere else and you lose track of what is happening. First of all, in Golden Anvil, you can export your stuff. As simple as that. So you can go and just print the articles that you want to print, and they're not made to look pretty, they're made to look functional. Effectively, it's just a list of all the information you're having there. And yes, as a tool to use during session can be very powerful, because you can track your notes effectively and give you access to information, but you do not have to use it as well as that. And I know that many people who use Golden Anvil daily do not use Golden Anvil when they're playing the sessions. As you said, they prepare stuff beforehand. They have a good architecture and good build of their world that they use when they want to play around with it or they want to prepare for the session. But in the game, it's them, the players, some pen, some dice, and a DM screen to separate them and make sure that you don't kill them all. That's pretty much it. I mean, that's how I use DM screens for. I don't know about you guys, but some dice rolls can kill a lot of parties, so you better hide them.
I got a couple metal dice that could kill some of the players too. So.
Oh, me too.
We've got a D20 that could definitely dislocate your toe.
Yeah, it was about 2 inches across and weighs a few pounds.
Right, exactly.
So yeah, that kind of taps into the interaction part of our agenda here. I could see people. We've all seen it, the table with the built-in TV screen. I can definitely see a DM having his laptop to control what's going on and point out things on particular layers, as well as having his own DM side notes on what he could see on the DM layer at that table. And I think this is a great tool for that.
We actually have a handout screen as part of the digital DM screen, so you can legit just link that screen to the handout screen, and then they can see the pictures of the visual aids or the map that you want them to see.
And nothing else. Yeah.
And nothing else.
So yeah, there are ways of, as I said, Golden Anvil was built with the idea that people would be able to use it as a digital toolset to run their sessions. But I say once again, I think that if you wanted to show information like that, use Roll20, honestly. Or any other VTT like the ones that are coming out lately. Lately, like Foundry, for example. Foundry VTT is a beautiful way of running your game. I think of Golden Anvil more like your digital DM screen and your books than your table. And that's where we sit, I think. And that's why I said before in the beginning, we're not a map making tool. We're not a virtual tabletop. We are your books. We are your maps with your scribbled maps and a way to keep notes during your session.
Very fair point.
Yeah, that makes sense. And thanks for the reference to Foundry. I've never heard of it before. Virtual tabletop pre-alpha overview.
Amazing. They're just starting now, but the Atropos, he in fact has a Discord server as well, is absolutely amazing. And I know for a fact, if Kaiora is here, that he did some of the art that he is using right now, if I'm not mistaken. But there are so many new people, because you know what? I feel that we are part of a community that is starting to grow from young individuals, or young, I'm not young, 37 years old, but from individuals that decided to take the fate of the community in their hands and do something for it and create because of their passion. And I know that many people did it in the past, and I know it was very hard. Like FASA, for example. I mean, we all know FASA, and it's an amazing body of work you've done, but you started small, you started in a different world. Now we have millions of players and so much competition, and I think that you will also be experiencing the fact that, you know, the market is changing. We have to offer the people around us a different way of interacting with the world because the demand changed. It's like it's like the levels of DMing. Like, I remember, just to be clear, I don't have the time to watch Critical Role. I know that everybody loves it. I have seen 1 or 2 sessions, but I know for a fact that there are probably hundreds of thousands of new storytellers that model the way they role play based on the role play and the DMing that happens in these. So these became schools for role playing. We were never like that. We were always the underdog, and now suddenly we have like millions of people watching shows of people role playing. I mean, that is a huge shift in the paradigm of what RPGs are, right? I don't know about you guys, but I started playing on the living room of my house with 5 people around that, and my father making fun of me and saying, "Ha ha, you're playing with things like la la la," kind of thing. And things change. Things change a lot. I mean, they are becoming almost mainstream nowadays.
Dude, I can just picture your father as Arnold Schwarzenegger when you said that, dude. That was perfect.
My father is nothing like Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Like the great Arnold Schwarzenegger.
And although he's making a lot of fun of us, he loves RPGs, and he might not be playing so much, but, you know, tell him a story, he'll just sit there and listen to you for hours.
I don't think my father ever really got the game. He's just wondering why the hell we're still playing, you know?
Yeah, same here. My father really only began to understand what I was doing when I brought in a book with my name in the credits and said, I wrote this. He's like, "Oh, you can make money at this. I get that." Like, yeah, kind of. It's a thing. You know,
what did you write, Andrew? What are your credits? Anything we've heard of? I don't know you personally, so I'm just asking. You may be the most famous guy in the world. I just don't know.
And I'm not. I did the Copa Loe for the Book of Crafts for Mage the Ascension. I've done a bunch of stuff for Earth Dawn. I did the Burning Desires standalone adventure for Earth Dawn for third edition. I did. I was in pretty much every issue of Earth Dawn Journal, which was our third-party magazine. And I'm the primary writer and line developer for 1879. I've done a bunch of. I also did some stuff for Shadowrun back in the day.
That's cool. That's the game I always wanted to play but never got into. The Shadowrun. I've always wanted that you get. And what anybody have like any probably you, Andrew. What is your best edition of Shadowrun? Would you say it was the one to really get into?
Second edition.
Okay.
Second edition was when the Matrix rules became playable. VR 2.0 came out, and suddenly Deckers were actually playable instead of, the guy the GM had to take into the next room for an hour while the rest of the party pulled out their magic cards.
Oh, yeah, yes. I remember these days.
The first edition Decker rules were terrible. VR 2.0 made them playable, and you could run the Decker in real time with the rest of the party, and it was so sweet.
Good to know. That's the one I'll pick up then. I got a list of games I want to try someday. They're all on my shelf. I'm looking at them right now. And damn it, someday.
I think we all have that bookshelf. Yeah, I think we all have that bookshelf of, I'll play these at some point. 10 years later. Same statement.
Yeah, definitely.
It's a bookshelf of shame.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. I got Shadowrun. Oh, look, I do have second edition. I got lucky. I got the right one. I got the Dresden Files over there. I got Stormbringer over there. Damn it. Someday, you sons of bitches.
Shadows of Esterin, Hillfolk. Yeah.
I have to admit, I got Shadows of Esteren because it just looked pretty.
Oh,
I don't even know what the rules are, but it looks so pretty.
It was the art that drew my wife in, and then I read through some of it, and it was the system and the world that pulled me in.
Interesting.
It's a different approach to low fantasy. The magic is not that prevalent, and when magic does happen, it's big and scary, and people take notice of it. And it's got a sort of creeping psychological horror element to it that is it's subtle. It is a game of subtle influences, and when something major happens, everybody notices. It's a big deal.
That's neat. That's neat how a basic RPG game is started with, really D&D can have so many different little facets and like evolutionary tracks. You know what I mean? Starting with a fireball's ass to what you just described is a very different thing.
I think that talking about fantasy and RPGs, we have all been a bit of how do you call that? Victimized by the fact that, I mean, it's not a bad thing, but it is what it is, that D&D first edition and the first RPGs set the tone of what fantasy is. And I think that one hard thing that all creators I've met so far are struggling with are going away from dwarves and elves and halflings.
And that Tolkienian base, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, yeah,
Tolkienian and everything that was spun from it. Yeah.
Exactly, because people identify more with it, and it's so hard, and you find so many times in projects that come and say, you know what, I won't do the goddamn elves and the goddamn dwarves kind of thing, I'll do something new, because it is hard for people to break into new ground because of this reason. Yeah.
Well, I think part of that, cough, cough, WotC, is they own the majority of the market. Whenever they push out setting-wise, the majority of the market's familiar with, and they got a lot of their things from Tolkien and their own Forgotten Realms settings. Cough, cough, hate you, Forgotten Realms. Anyway, and I think that's just, people are sick of it. It's been 20, 30 years where we want something newish. Traditional things are fine, and playing all that is fine, but the other part of the market, the smaller part, is where all these third-party publishers are, and they have new and interesting and creative things or reimaginings of things, and it's just fantastic to see. It's just, well, they don't have the controlling part of the market to get these things well-known or household-named kind of deals.
Yeah.
I think that's going to change, though, because I think what we're seeing now is loads of new players coming in, loads of young players coming in, and they're going to go through exactly what you guys have gone through, which is, yay, dwarves, elves, fantasy, yay, and then they're going to say, well, I've done that, what's next? And I think that the time is coming where we will see more diversification in setting, we will see more diversification in concept, and I'm really excited for that time. And I think in the meantime, it's just about having a very strong hook, a very strong concept for your world that really glues together and is attractive.
The attractive part, I feel, that is very important. One of the things that really drew my eye lately, and I don't know, guys, if you've seen it, was the Genesis. Have you seen it by any chance? So the Genesis did something that I don't think anybody else did in the past. They created a trailer for their RPG, like an actual movie trailer for the RPG, and it has a beautiful art, and it comes in beautiful big books, like big format, with a very extreme and interesting design, which is very interesting in itself. But we enter an era that people make trailers for their role-playing games to essentially show we are different, we are essentially here as well, we are on the map. And of course, things that Kickstarter and things like that help.
Exactly. Yeah.
Because they allow people who do not have the original budget to go there and do it.
And the thing about a trailer is that you can show very quickly. I mean, I posted it really as a joke in a way, the world building tips thing. But one of the things in there, the things I go through in there is like, what is your scope? What is your genre? What is your mood? These kinds of things. And a trailer can show that very quickly in a very engaging way, in a way that even the best written text won't capture the contemporary mind in the same way.
Not in the amount of time.
No, not as quickly and not as effectively.
And that is the problem, because lately we have seen a huge drop in the time that people can spend doing a single thing.
Yeah.
And that is a problem
People
when it
don't
comes to the
read.
written word.
Yeah.
Yes.
No, that's a weird thing. You're right. As we all pause for 3 minutes and 26 seconds to watch the Genesis trailer, I will just talk about that a little aspect, because people don't read anymore. It's weird. I don't either. I don't read as much as I used to. I admit it. Neither novels nor fiction, nonfiction, not even blogs. And so that's kind of why I got into the podcasting. It's just easier than sitting down and hacking out something. I get to sit there and talk.
But the reason is very simple.
Why?
Well, there's a lot to that. Good.
Go on, please.
Well, there's just so much to it these days. We've been trained to be very, very busy. The advent of social media, we have to look at every single post. What about our Netflix queue? We have so many things to catch up on. We got into this mentality of we don't have time to relax and do the things we want to do because we're too busy, well, quote unquote, catching up on what society wants us to do. And that's not a conspiracy theory. It's just how it is these days that we've been trained to do that. Love the internet, but the internet's kind of spoiled us in that way to be super, super busy.
Well,
Always something going on.
In fact, it's not even being super busy. And sorry, that will come my psychology degree coming there. It's not about being busy. It's about feeling that you're busy. And it's a different thing. Like you are feeling that every second you're spending doing one thing, you are losing time from the other thing, even if you don't know what the other thing was that you were supposed to be doing. And that makes your...
The balls in the air syndrome.
Yes,
yeah.
ball in the air syndrome, exactly. Which means effectively that your attention span is so short that you can hardly commit to a piece of text. As simple as that. I mean, and we've seen it in World Anvil, because funny enough, World Anvil is about people writing their worlds and then essentially for people to read them. And we found out that the most efficient articles in World Anvil are those that have visually striking images to begin with, followed by quotes to give the sense and the feeling of the article, followed by very short, simple paragraphs. The moment somebody goes in the Gold Anvil page, I can tell you that from a technical perspective because I have the statistics. The moment that somebody goes into a page in Gold Anvil and you see a block of text larger than 12 lines in width, people just drop off like flies. As simple as that. We just close the day.
It's amazing, dude. And you could track that too, and it does make sense. I mean, I just don't. I have all the blog feed. I have the whole one I had before, plus new and additional blogs that have come out since the last couple of years, and I'm not reading them. I'll skim them really quickly, and it takes.
And there are tricks you can do.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're made. I mean, for example, you can lower the width of your lines, making essentially an one column full width 2 columns. In fact, helps, and that's something, of course, we knew from newspapers and magazines, like from the 1900s. It's not something new. It just comes back because, writing. They were better at writing. As simple as that, because they had to write more, and because that was the only way people would engage with them. Adding imagery on the side of text also helps because it gives context to the eye. So there are many things you can actually do. For example, having a sidebar which is a different color from the main text also helps a lot in articles, and people use it very efficiently because the sidebar can give you the summary and the quick read, while the body of text will give you the information if you want to go deeper into it. And then it goes down to what is your hook and things like that. Okay, I don't want to go very special, but there are tricks you can do, but it's kind of happening.
It's an epidemic.
It's an epidemic and a science at the same time, yeah.
I mean, I caught myself doing this the other day. I had the option to read the description of the movie or watch the trailer. I chose to watch the trailer. I don't know why, because reading it would have been way quicker instead of me wasting 5 minutes deciding, okay, this isn't for me. I think where the mind switch today is all visual, and reading, like we were saying here, is considered, at least in our heads, not a quick method of doing things anymore.
Craig, a very other sad truth. If you are watching the video, you can at the same time do other things as well. And that is a very sad truth, but it's true. Because you can easily flip when you listen to something, to read something at the same time or check out something else. It's terrifying, but this is what happens.
The other thing is video gives you a different kind of information. It gives you visual information, it gives you sound effects. The music that is chosen gives you tone in no words. So it's just a very different kind of information transferable. So, like, if I sit down to read a novel, I don't think, oh, I might as well watch the video instead. Like, I know I'm sitting down to read a novel, but I think in everyday life and for a lot of functionality, we do prefer videos because they give us more information in that time.
Case in point, right now, my brother is in the server. His name is Doc, in parentheses Mike, and he's new to the whole Discord thing in terms of this. To do it for video games. And I said, "Are you listening?" I texted him on my phone, "Are you listening?" Because we can multitask, right? And he says, "Yeah, I'm chopping wood as I listen," because he's got shit to do. If he was,
that's why podcasts are so nice.
It'd be a whole different story,
And I think that's why podcasts became so successful as a type of medium, because podcast is something you can put in your ears while you're going to work, or while you're essentially about to chill, or while you're cooking, or whatever. That it allows you to have full function of your eyes and your hands without having to care about anything else. And I don't know, guys, if you're in a big city or a small city, or you have to. I guess most of you are from the US, so you have to travel by car at your work. But in the UK, for example, in London, opening a book in the underground sometimes is just not possible because it's so cramped. So putting something in your ear and just listening there, means that everybody is away from you, and you create this distance from everybody else, which is bad, but it is what it is. And B, you can listen to it without having to have your hands up or anything like that.
You're absolutely right. I mean, when podcasts started becoming popular, I didn't think they would ever make it long term. It's just be a short fad. But because of videos and YouTube and things of that nature. But you're absolutely right. I don't have to pay attention as much with just pure audio. I'm free to do whatever I want, take it with me on my commute, like you're saying, or whenever I want to go outside with like my iPod or whatever. It just is that freedom of liberty to do these million things I'm quote unquote having to do while simultaneously doing the things I want to do, like listen to this podcast.
Where does that leave us in terms of novels and publishing? And even short stories are too long for the attention span, is what we're talking about here. I know you wrote a book, I guess, and how is that? People aren't buying it in hardcover anymore. They're buying it on a Kindle, from what I understand. They're not reading as much anymore. Novels have so inspired my game of D&D that it's just beyond belief. I mean, I've done complete stories based on stuff from novels, whether the players knew it or not. And without that out there, aren't we losing a huge thing? Are we losing a huge bit of our cultural heritage in a sense and a potential?
I think that, I don't know about the States, but for example, in the UK, where a lot of people travel by train a lot, particularly within the cities, I see loads of reading. Everyone's reading on Kindle or their phones, which is fantastic because it means that long form written word is actually evolving and getting there with technology. But I also think that this kind of creativity is coming in all sorts of different mediums, and I don't think that's a bad thing. I love novels, I write novels, I read novels, I think they're fantastic. But I also like watching Netflix series. I also like watching YouTube series. And I love that creativity is coming into lots of different mediums and is finding different ways to express itself. I don't think that's a bad thing. I think it's fantastic. Rembrandt did fine pictures with oil color, but he also did etchings. They're both amazing. They're just very different forms.
And on the reverse side of things, I think our reading level has dropped because what used to be, I don't know, middle school reading level is now high school or college reading level.
True.
And that might be a States thing. I don't know about the UK, but it's definitely a thing over here where we read shorter things now. Like what was it called when I was in high school? Cliff Notes. I didn't have to read the whole book. I can get the highlights of the Cliff Notes or a summary or a review or things like that. So I think all the options are going to become more abundant and all the formats are more abundant. But I think over time, they're going to become shorter and more condensed. Like there's Swords and Wizardry Complete, for instance, but there's also Swords and Wizardry Light. It's just a condensed, bare bones, this is what it is.
People
I don't know if it's
Magazine,
going to go.
if People Magazine had a hard and fast rule, looking at the time that people are willing to invest in reading a piece, People Magazine had a hard and fast rule that no article in their magazine was ever longer than the average person could read in the average trip to the bathroom.
Somehow I knew you were going to say that. Yeah. That makes sense.
We call that shit-terial. It's not reading material, it's shit-terial.
Hey, that's good user experience.
Well, you wind up with people, and this has already been discussed in this conversation, whose attention span has been compressed by the fire hose they're trying to drink from, by the culture that says you must pay attention to all these things, to down to the point where trying to read a book from 1900 is simply beyond them.
Yeah.
I just finished reading Edward Bulwer Lytton's The Coming Race, and it's a wonderful book, but there's an awful lot of people nowadays who wouldn't get past the first chapter simply because Bulwer Lytton writes in these run-on sentences. You get to the end of the paragraph before you get to the period.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
I tried to read Jack Vance's books for years, and I have the same freaking problem, man. It's like, get to the goddamn point, buddy. Jesus.
I had this problem with Lovecraft. I mean, I had a lot of problems with Lovecraft, but that's one of the problems I had with Lovecraft was just, I find the writing style bad because the writing style is not tailored to modern consumption. And I read a lot of historical books that I didn't have a problem with, but Lovecraft I really had. Like, Jane Austen, fine. Not an issue. But, yeah, Lovecraft was one that just drove me up the wall. I will say that, so I come from a very academic family. My parents are both university professors, and my mom is constantly complaining that her first years cannot read. By which I mean they can't deal with the level of first-year undergraduate material that they're expected to read, and they do not understand that actually they have to invest time to sit down and read a book in order to gain knowledge and in order to gain enough information that they can then think critically about the subject. This is something that is a problem at university level as well.
This has been a problem for me. I'm writing a late Victorian era role-playing game, and I've got to have the right voice and tone in it to set the mood for the genre. At the same time, I cannot write in a true Victorian style because nobody would read it.
Sure. So it's finding the right costume for your prose, where it's shiny enough and digestible enough, but it has a touch of Victorian authenticity, I guess.
Yeah, I find myself looking to Ruth Goodman a lot as a style model.
Mm.
You know who she is, right?
No, I do not, but I am currently Googling her, so give me a moment.
Isn't that nice, though? Isn't this technology nice? Like,
oh yeah,
think back 20 years ago, how hard would it be for Janet to find out who she is?
Yeah.
She'd actually have to go to a bookstore or something. Ruth Goodman is a documentary presenter and experiential historian who wrote the book How to Be a Victorian, which is on my reference shelf.
That's an interesting name.
Yeah, she did one for Tudors as well.
Oh, it's a brilliant, brilliant book that goes into such exhaustive detail of what it was actually like to be a middle or lower class person in that time period.
Mm.
She's got the voice that, to some extent that I've been looking for, where she's able to give the feel of the era, but present it in bite-sized pieces that are digestible by modern readers.
Yeah, how do you say that? Popular history is a really, really good model for these kind of things. I've been writing a novel set in the 18th century, and it's something that I looked into as well, because my default setting is highbrow academia when I write, and I have to unpick that because nobody wants to read that for fun. And it's not clothing for a story. Like, the story is very, very kind of interactive and fast-paced and everything else. It can't be written like highbrow academia. So
read Charles
actually,
Bukowski. Charles Bukowski will get you in that right mindset if you want to really lowbrow it.
But
I think one thing, just to kind of turn things back towards cartography, I feel like there's that, with movies and lots of media about just being close enough, that a reader or a viewer or whomever can imagine it without necessarily having to be exact. And I feel the same thing when I go to the Cartographer's Guild, which I love for looking at examples of really great work. People get stuck on this minutia of, oh, mountains shouldn't go like that, or oh, rivers don't go that way, or whatever. But the point is, for almost most applications of those maps, it doesn't matter unless it's reality breaking enough that a reader,
I'll give you an example of that.
World is going to go like, why is the river flowing up the mountain? No one's going to care. No one's going to care that you're breaking some rule of plate tectonics by having that. It's about, is it close enough where you can be in there and have fun, and not is it exact to an academic degree?
I'll give you an example of that. The other day we had one of our moderators who she took the map of the United States and drew it by paper, on paper, literally by tracing the map, and then literally just didn't even change the geography at all, just put some color on it and showed it to our map making channel. And we had people that saying to them, this map is not possible, it wouldn't be real, because they have not realized that was actually the map of the states. So, in truth, if you want to find a mistake, or you want to be contrived on the way that you understand map making and cartography, you can always be. It is as simple as that. But I can tell you, back to what we were talking about, visual communication and the way we give information to people, a map is a place for you to inspire your players or your readers or anything like that to explore a world or a place you created. And it is pretty much, for me, this is the use of a map. And that is one of the reasons I love Kaiora's maps, for example, which, again, he's here, and I'm sorry, I'm not trying to plug him or anything like that, but he is an amazing cartographer. But what I love about his work is that his maps are not trying to tell you this is the exact map of the location and it will take you 3.5 days to go from place A to place B. It will try to show you this is a desert, and it's a desolate place with dragons and death and cold, and warm winds. And this is a beautiful, idyllic shore. And that's where the people are getting the information from the map from. And because if you show somebody a map and tells you, I want to go there, they don't want to go there because they saw how well your mountains go or the river flowing. It's just because they like the place on the map, right?
It lets see they're happy or clandestine. Absolutely. I think Todd's right. It can be abstract, or it can be as finely detailed as you want. And I think the finely detailed people, those are the people who are building the world, and they want it to be that way. The person viewing it, though, it's not going to care one way or the other. They can recognize a mountain's a mountain, a river's a river. How pretty it looks is subjective, honestly.
Yeah, interestingly, I interviewed Devon Rue, and I don't know if you guys know Devon Rue. She's, in my mind, she's like the queen of maps. But she is an amazing fantasy cartographer, and she comes from an art background, so she approaches her maps as art. And one of the things she always says is, you are representing a three-dimensional space on a two-dimensional piece of paper. It is not going to be completely accurate, and when she approaches her maps, she approaches them more in terms of this hook of visual engagement and art and tone than she does in terms of perfect accuracy. And for me, that's a great way. But again, if you have 3 rabid cartographers at your table who want everything to be perfect, good user experience means that you make a perfect map that is perfect for them. You have to, you know your players.
Exactly. Know your players and know your audience is an important one, I think, on that as well. But yeah, in RPG and fantasy, as we said before about the video and the fact that people want to absorb information as quickly as possible, creating a map and using a map that not only shows you the location and the place names that you would like to know, but also effectively give you the genre, right? Like, if you see a happy color, bright map and it's about a Cthulhu campaign, you wouldn't be really into the mood for Cthulhu, right? I mean, like, it's not exactly what you would expect. You'd expect a black-white ink drawn map with probably some like tentacles in the side kind of thing.
And that actually goes back really nicely to what Andrew was saying before, is that starting with your map is a great idea, and using that to tone your campaign and vice versa. It's a really good idea. Yeah. I hear puppies.
I think what comes to my mind is people that are really into the finite detail, or A, the creators, or B, people that are looking for like a replica of something, like a replica terrain thing, or an exact replica map of a certain battle or this kind of thing. I think that's where the fine detail has its place. But beyond that, it can be, like I said, as pretty as you want it to be or as representational as you want it to be, as long as people get what it is. I think that's what matters at the end of the day. But that's my opinion.
I just 10 second into death this Degenesis trailer, 10 seconds every little while, and holy shit. Wow.
I know, right?
Wow.
You should see the art. I mean, that's what it hooked me. It's very well done, and in fact, they use the. Funny enough, if you open up the book on the first page, you see a map. Funny enough, because it takes Europe and says, "Look, you know what? I will show you in one page how effed the world became after the apocalypse. Here you are, and now you open the book and you know exactly what you're looking at. You're not looking at post-apocalyptic. By the place names, you understand kind of the setting. You kind of understand the factions. They took the names of the old Earth and they changed them to effectively kind of give them the feeling of that is the old world, but it kind of changed. And literally, by looking at an A3 sheet, you understand the world.
That's amazing. And in combination with the video, you get the gist of everything that's going on there.
Exactly. You know what you're going to play. As simple as that.
Brave new world, boys and girls.
Well, again, sometimes I feel, I don't know how many of you have that problem and if you live in a big city or not, but we often talk to Janet and say, you know what, we love this technology, we love being in a fast-paced environment, but when we have some time in the future and we kind of feel complete of what we've done, we just want to go to a beautiful place far away from civilization, open up a little place to make food for people, and have effectively a whole Danville run by there. A rural area far away from each other to chill and read books in the evening by the fire. Because sometimes after all this overly demanding data, data influx you get, you just need to chill and you just take things slower. And I think that's something we will learn as a society. We are in a renaissance of data and information, and that will change. It always goes in circles. It might be 10 years, 30 years, 50 years, but it's always circles of like that.
I think between the data, the information, the rat race, plus, without getting political, all this shit that's going on in our world today, this is why the Hallmark Channel is getting record viewers. People just want happy, simple, basic shit. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I live in New York City. I understand. Wow.
I bet you do.
Hey, I live in New York City too. It's not that bad.
I caught myself watching old episodes of The Waltons the other day just to chill out with a rum and coke, man.
That's a fair point. I mean, it's hard to... I remember when there was like... we definitely migrated from quote-unquote wholesome television to gritty television these days.
Mm-hmm. But television is changing as well. And it becomes a different medium than it was 20 years ago. We were just now watching Sabrina, the new TV series. I don't know if you've seen it, guys, but television and new TV shows, starting with probably, I would say, Game of Thrones as the beginning of that era, brought the idea of television and the narrative that extends longer than the 2 or 3 hours of a movie in a whole other level lately. And I think that is essentially the finesse. Like, television went through 20, 30 years of growth and like rampant, let's try everything we can find. And now we're trying to understand a bit more about what people really need and what the narrative should be. And what's the difference between a movie and a TV show, which is exactly the difference of a comic book and a book.
Or an audiobook.
Or an audiobook, that's true, very true, yeah.
Yeah, I think things are changing all the time, and what's true today, 10 years, 20 years from now, is going to be totally different, and how we consume media as well. Like, look at the iPod and the tablet. Those used to be low in abundance, but now everybody has 1 or 5.
Well, it comes with the requirements. Literally, this is what the issue there is, right? If you need to consume media in a specific way, there will be technology that will accommodate it, and that's why the iPod became important. The same thing will happen with every industry, including our own.
Yeah, I think that's why a lot of folks who are Gen Xers are, remembering D&D in the simpler days, and they're going back to pen and pencil, and they're going back to their old dice, and they maybe got kids now, and they're showing them the old game, and they're sitting around the table like they used to do. It's part nostalgia, and I think it's part, a simpler escape to an older, funner, more easygoing time, like you see on Netflix with the kids playing. A lot of people probably saw that and said, "Shit, that was me,"
Yep.
and then tried it out, and there's like, that's still fun, damn it.
No, it's true. It is very true. The truth of the matter is, we are humans, and we do have limitations in terms of what we can do. And as with everything we tried as a human race, at some point we always come back to what it's simpler and more refined. We see this with everything since the dawn of time. It's not something new. We're not really in a verge of a difference in terms of how we act as humans. Media, social media, television, comics, or anything else is just the different names of the same thing. It's just us getting information and citing information from the world around us. I think that we are in a very exciting time, but I also think we're in a very chaotic time because, as you said, we're bombarded by information at a point that we've never been able to do before. And you know what? The first person who discovered that, and I do not like to admit that, is Facebook. Remember when Facebook started back in how many years ago? I don't know how old I am right now. But your Facebook stream was literally everything that everybody who you knew and you had a friend of said the last X hours or minutes. Now, Facebook stream is probably what Facebook judges that is the things that you like.
True.
And this is how it's going to happen. The information overload will be filtered by you choosing the filter mechanism that it will be your choice of actually choosing, whatever
Sure.
this might be.
So the age of information will go over to the age of filtering, be
Yeah.
that algorithms or your own choice or whatever.
Or an artificial intelligence that actually is in your home and knows you better than your mother, probably. Which is going to probably be the way that things go. That's why you see Intel being so crazy about creating processors that are specifically designed for neural networks, because that's the future. The future is an Alexa who knows what you need and will serve you exactly what you need.
And can anticipate your needs.
Exactly.
It's kind of fun, cool, and scary all at the same time, man.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, it is.
It
At the
absolutely
same-
is.
You will have a butler doing that. Now you have Alexa.
At the same time, we're looking at a recreation form, the tabletop role-playing game, that requires extended attention spans. It seems to me like part of what we're doing with this hobby is trying to counteract this compression influence of the culture we've built. We're building space and time for small groups of people to get together for an extended period and focus on one story and building that story. And what I like to tell people is that humans have been telling stories for our entertainment since we learned how to build a fire and sit around it. But in Western culture, we've lost that tradition. We've lost a lot of the ability. And what role-playing games are doing is teaching us how to go back to that very early human activity and pick it back up.
I would go as far as saying that people who play role-playing games, storytellers and players, are literally professional escapists.
Yes.
But I also
Well
think
said.
so much about D&D. Sorry, so much about TTRPGs. It's that terrible habit that I've got myself into. Is about figuring out what it means to be human and what it means to interact. I mean, that's what a lot of fictional things are about. But it's about the social experience. It's about social storytelling. But also, our characters go through arcs about what it means to be a sapient person making moral choices in a world. That's what it's about.
In many ways, RPGs are the next level from bookmaking, because books were a tool that was used by storytellers to convey a story which was written by them in the best way possible according to their belief of what the story should be. Then when you had things like the Lone Wolf books that created the idea of being able to navigate your story within the confines of a book.
Choose your own adventure.
Exactly. And now we have storytellers who take the role of the world and players who define what the story is. And in many ways, this is beautiful because that means that there are still people in this world that might not be able to write, but they are able to dream, imagine, and sit around the campfire or around a table full of dice and make their own worlds and beliefs come true.
I played a pickup game a few years back, and he asked us 3 questions at the very beginning. Is anybody a doctor, a lawyer, or in the military? We all said no, and he asked for our cell phones. Now we can play tabletop, or D&D. And I keep that today. I mean, we think we're so busy we got to pay attention to our cell phones, our computers, and all this or that. Let's just kick back, play a story-driven game for a few hours, and then we can go back to being our quote-unquote busy selves.
Going back to what you said about people creating things and imagining and training ourselves to imagine, I think that if ever you want to make the world change or be different, you have to be able to first imagine what you want to have. You can't just go against something without imagining something new. And I think to the extent that anything that we do that's creative helps us develop that ability, helps the world as a whole. You know what I mean?
I think that all great people, and okay, that is actually quite cocky to say, but all great people were people in history of mankind, were people who are able to imagine and then act upon it. And sadly, our world sometimes nowadays might not allow us to act upon it because of the sheer size of it, not in the level that other people had the opportunity in the past, but at least role-playing games allow you to emulate how would it be if. And the if is open-ended to whatever you want it to be.
You know, it's funny. I was talking to Rob Kuntz one time. You guys probably, I'm sure you know who he is. He was with Gygax back in the day. He's one of the guys who helped develop a lot of the game. And he was telling me that when a game company came to them, or a new company came to them and said, we want to make adventure modules and publish it. Can we do that? Do we have the right? And Rob been talking to Gygax, and Gygax says, why the hell would anybody want somebody to do their imagining for them? Sure, they'll never sell. I don't give a shit. Let them do it. That'll never be a market.
Well, I think that it is a step process, right? Like you create a world, let's say as a publisher, because you love it and because you dreamed it and you want to share it with the people around you. And then this world is taken to the hands of a storyteller and 5 murder hobos, and it becomes their own world. But some people need that basis. I was very against, in fact, using any campaign setting for a long time in my life. And then I realized that, you know what? Sometimes, because I'm a very busy person, I might want to create that. But you know what? The Great Gold Anvil, so who am I to say? I kind of love to create my own worlds. And that's how it goes with me. But I think that the experience of writing a campaign setting is a beautiful thing, as much as it for you and for the people who are going to read your work. Because imagination sparks imagination. There is not really any how do you call it? Virgin birth. How do you call it in English? Like birth out of nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah, you got it.
Yeah, so nothing comes from nothing, essentially.
Yes.
Yeah.
That makes sense. That makes sense. And you're right. We do inspire and affect each other when we're doing this creativity. Just like it's like jazz almost when you're playing around the table. I'm sure we've all experienced it. It's like being in a jazz concert on stage when everything is just grooving. We're all riffing off of each other and just creating as we go. It's fucking fantastic. I'm sorry, I can't say it. Can I say it? Can I swear here?
You can fucking swear as much as you fucking want to.
All right, good.
I like this place.
Fucking A.
Janet always shouts at me when I'm swearing on stream, like, you should not be doing that with children. I was like, okay, sorry.
We try and keep our streams PC, but your streams we're absolutely prepared to filth up.
Get down and dirty at the tavern.
I know it's Eric's place, so I assume we could swear, but
Yeah, you can swear on the.
The beer is flowing and the air is blue down at Tencast Tavern.
Mhm.
Love it.
So we got
Yeah,
7 minutes here
I'm-
before we go into promotion time. Anybody want to say any last words here?
This has been really fun.
I agree. Really cool.
And it was really nice to meet you guys.
Yeah. I would never ever get to meet all of you. I'm positive in any other context other than this, and it's really been really neat.
Yeah, it's been really cool. We suffer a lot from well, to say we suffer a lot from living in England doesn't quite capture what I'm trying to say, but we're far from America, and there's so much that goes on there, like all the cons and this kind of thing, that we feel very detached from. So actually being able to jump in chat and talk to people is really great. We like it.
Being
and
this
what-
far from the European community has its disadvantages as well.
Sure.
We're in the middle of arranging travel for one of our people because Earth Dawn now has a dedicated convention in Poland, and so
That's so cool.
we're sending one of our people to Poland for this Earth Dawn convention, and that's being a very big deal. You know, trying to travel from the United States to anywhere is a huge deal right now. But there's also the cost, there's the paperwork, so on and so forth.
Yeah, no. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say that it's really tough that we've got to this very international world, which is fantastic, and we've got to this very international communities via the website, which is fantastic. But now we're in a point where, like, our geography is catching up with us, as it were.
Yeah, and travel time for anything physical gets to be such a deal.
And so expensive.
Mm-hmm. And then if you're already part of the EU, it's not so much of a deal to travel to Poland, but trying to cross the border, oh Lord.
Yeah. Watch this space for Britain remaining part of the EU.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
I was.
insane.
It
Yeah, I
will
was
be
trying to
us,
avoid
and then
that.
America and the rest of the Europe.
Just take a boat like my ancestors did. It'll be fine.
Yeah.
Talk about a shit show. Well, the problem is they already voted. Now they got implemented. 2 years later, and they're still like, holy crap. I barely know what's going on, and I shake my head, and I'm like, well, it ain't just us in America. Then things all
The
screwed up.
fact that you barely know what's going on puts you on a level with all of our government. So congratulations.
That is very true.
Yeah, no, that's a disaster that we don't need to talk about. But very, very good inspiration for a campaign, I think. Political
could be.
machinations, politics gone wrong, corruption, misinformation. Absolutely amazing story potential there.
I think if it teaches you something is the fact that when we create these beautiful, intricate political networks of people that know what they're doing, we kind of miss the point that the people who are doing these machinations probably they have no freaking idea what is going on anyway.
Yeah, exactly. Funnily enough, I make world building videos to sort of support the World Anvil YouTube channel that we have going on. I'm making one right now about building societies and cultures. And one of the things I had to say was, like, even if you have a system in theory, that does not mean you have a system in practice. Because what people think is going on and what is actually going on is often quite different. And as for cultures and societies, so for everything else in world
We're all
building.
familiar with the Peter Principle, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so, the people who have risen to the top in government have no clue simply because they've advanced beyond their level of competence.
Yeah, absolutely.
As a government employee, I could truly attest to that. Shit, in my state, at least, shit flows uphill. So, defining all logic and
Going to Canada?
right to the
I
I
have
had
to
to. You left it open. I had to.
be careful of drawing a map and taking it to some angry cartographers, because they'll get very upset by that.
And we had that's something you can actually play with your mapping. One of the things we're messing with in 1879, the native people of the Grosvenor world put east at the top of the map
Yeah,
rather
Actually,
than
there's
north.
there's so many cool historical paradigms of like different ideologies behind mapping So putting east at the top rather than north is just one, but I saw an amazing map from it was a medieval Arabic map where instead of mapping by geography, they'd mapped by the most important works that had been released by the countries, the most important scientific or philosophical books. That's how they've mapped everything out. So, like, the geographical maps, as we take them for granted, are not the only forms of maps, and they weren't even always the most important forms of maps. Like, maps are used for so much more than just mountains.
Isochronic maps. Isochronic maps are a wonderful, wonderful thing. And if you map by travel time, it changes the layout of the world so massively.
Yeah.
As far as the crow flies, in many ways, right? So you just change the topography based on how long it takes you to go from place A to place B.
Yeah, but it's so much more about terrain and stuff as well.
But that's what changes. Like if you have a desert,
if there's a mountain range in the way, suddenly that's much further away.
Sure, exactly. And actually that goes back to the point we were making before about how maps exert so much force over the people and the way the world works and everything else. So you may think it's not this is something that Devon said, that a lot of people when they make maps, they forget about topography. So they put in mountains and they put in deserts, but they forget about things like foothills or elevated plain lands or this kind of thing. And that's the stuff that really has a massive impact over whether it takes an hour to get there or 3 days to get there.
Speaking of maps, you guys are talking really big picture. Let me break it down to some nitty gritty, something that happened the other day. And this could be a shout out to whoever's listening, whoever's here, whoever may listen to this podcast. I'm running the Tyranny of Dragons adventure. I stole something from it in my campaign just Friday night, right? Now, in one of the little adventure things, you're exploring this thing in a swamp, and whoever made the map, all right, you don't do brown on gray. Number one, you can't see shit. Number two, you don't change map orientation from northeast, southwest, going one direction for one level of the map. And then when you go to the second level of the map, not only you change the orientation of what is northeast, southwest, you twisted the map around, but you made it bigger. You don't do that. If anybody ever comes across the stupid idiot who did this, smack him for me, all right? Just right in the head. It was so confusing. Oh, my God. Plus, you're drinking when you're playing D&D, of course, so what the hell? How are you supposed to figure that out, you know? Anyway, that's all. My gripe's over.
That's a really good story. I like that.
All right. I think, it is that time to promote our stuff, and then we'll open it up to the audience for Q&A. So who wants to go first? And if you got links, be prepared to drop them in the chat there.
I went first and start, so I can go last this time around.
Fair enough. I don't think we should advertise anything else about Gold Anvil because thank you very much, guys, but you spent so much time talking about it. Only thing I would like to say is that I would love, like, with a passion, to see faster work in Gold Anvil. Like, that's all I have to say. Like, I would like to fall on my knees and say thank you for a long, long time. If we can actually deal with that and do something like that happen, that would be amazing.
Let me see what we can do. And since that's thrown to me, FASA, we have Earth Dawn 4th edition out. We've brought out the Travar source book. We have the Elven Nations book in layout. We're just waiting on the last couple of maps to go to press with that. After that, we've got the City-State of Iapos getting its own book. Arancia is getting its own book. We're doing a lot of setting development. For 1879, the Players and GMs guides are out. The London source book is out. There's an adventure out for it. We have the Players and GMs Companions coming out. The Players Companion is written and is in layout. The GM's Companion is almost done. Those books will open up the toolbox and give the players and GMs a lot of the tools to expand the world themselves, how to build their own spells, their own creatures, create their own character professions, so on and so forth. And it provides a lot of examples of how this works. This year's Gen Con scenario for 1879 is Worm in the Big Apple. It is set in New York City in 1881. So if you want to play steampunk Shadowrun in New York City in 1881, join us at Gen Con. One of the dragon who lives up on Park Avenue loaned an artifact to a museum for an exhibit, and somebody had the brass ones to go and lift it, and now you got to find it and get it back before his nibs goes looking for it himself.
Cool.
Even a time limit here. Going to be exciting. We're going to have breaking and entering in a cult headquarters and a chase scene through the streets of Manhattan and all sorts of stuff going on.
Well, I guess
So
I'll
here he is. Good.
I got to throw in my, what I'm doing lately is, besides running a bunch of games, I'm doing a podcast on Anchor. Now, Anchor is a weird little thing because what you could do there is you record your podcast from your phone or from online or whatever. It's like I'm advertising Anchor here instead of my shit, but it's really cool because whoever was back around 8-9 years ago when the blogosphere started really taking off, back in the Ragnardia days and all that, we all went on Blogger, started our blog, and then we cross-pollinated from blog post to blog post. One thing would inspire another. We'd comment on each other's blog posts. The cool thing about this Anchor podcasting service is that, number one, if you have a podcast, it uploads it to everywhere for you, like Apple and everywhere else. And the other thing is that you could actually leave voice messages on other people's podcasts, just like you used to be able to comment. And that goes back to what we were saying before. We don't want to write, we don't want to read, but we can listen. And while we're listening in the car, you click voice message, leave a 60-second voice message about whatever you just heard, and then that person plays the voice message back and comments on it. And there's maybe, 40 or 50 of us doing this thing right now. Started with Jason Hobbs. Eric Tenkar's got one going on. There's a bunch of us doing it. It's a nice little community that really inspires me, reminds me of the old blogosphere that got the OSR going 9 years ago. And so anyway, long-winded way of going about saying I do a podcast on Anchor, but you can find it everywhere. You go on Apple and you can get it on Spotify even. It's Joe the Lawyer's Not So Wondrous Imaginings podcast. And I go in spurts. Sometimes I do 5 a week. Sometimes I do one every week or so. But so just rambling. Just if you liked what I was saying here or the way I said it, that's pretty much what you're going to get out of the podcast. So so that's pretty much it. And if you're in Southwest Connecticut in the Bridgeport, New Haven area, I run a couple games regularly, 5e D&D. And so hit me up, Joe the Attorney at gmail.com, and I'll try to fit you into the game. That's it.
You said you were on last time?
Yeah, I'll go last. Go ahead.
Okay, so here at Tinker's Tavern, if you'd like to support the tavern itself, please visit our Patreon at this link. And if you'd like to support the Breakfast Club and the Coast to Coast, which is our new show that's exactly like the Breakfast Club, but on Friday evening, you can support it here at this link.
And I'm Todd. I run Hex Press, and I also help here at the tavern. I'll drop a link to my YouTube channel, which is my current focus, in the chat.
And there's a link to my latest podcast. I'm going to do another one tonight. It might be a Sunday night thing with my brother, and then during the week, a couple other ones just by myself.
I'm checking on Anchor right now. It looks pretty cool. So
it's really slick. I really enjoy it.
Also recorded on Anchor. These.
Yeah, that's true. This just comes out as a podcast, doesn't it?
Yep.
Neat, man.
All right, with that, we will unmute the audience here in the dreaded Q&A session.
Dreaded?
I mean, looking forward to. Yes.
Famous last words.
Holy moly.
Yeah, Alex Putman, your mic's queued up there. And back to mute. I'll unmute him in a second to see if he fixed it.
Oh-de-do-de-do.
Were there any questions from backup chat that we can ponder in the meantime?
Kaora raised something really interesting when we were talking about how to get through the crowded market and how to monetize your world building. He mentioned stuff like going forward with Patreon. I'm going to find the comment now and I can't find it.
I actually had a broader question to ask you guys.
Hey, Mark.
Hello. So I was thinking about this as you guys were talking. Sorry about my croaky voice, by the way. I was thinking about this as you guys were talking. Patreon is obviously a big platform for creative people to obviously get monetized. But it's very broad. And I know that World Anvil is obviously looking at ways to help creative people and world builders in general put their works onto World Anvil and then eventually become popular and get paid for it possibly. So have you guys actually considered a long ways down the line, but allowing people to directly contribute to worlds by donating or subscribing and then paying content creators on World Anvil itself?
Most certainly. In fact, we just launched the first version of that. The new tier called Sage, which is above Grandmaster, is a professional tier only. And the focus of that is, in fact, to prepare as a testing bed for the idea of people not doing transactions via Patreon or via PayPal, but at some point to have their own subscription system in Gold Anvil the same way would you have in Twitch or Patreon or anywhere else. It is important for us to make this right when we first do it, and that's why I have not pushed towards it just yet, because I know there are alternatives right now, but I'm sorry for saying that, and I don't want to throw any
shade
to Patreon, but Patreon, for example, right now, and I know that you're going to have a problem with that, Mark, as well, has a huge issue with their transactions, and suddenly transactions on Patreon take like 3 days to be, which is horrible. It is like, not only they do everything every first of the month only, they now, the only thing they were supposed to be good at, they fail at. And that is a very bad thing. And yes, we are trying to fix that. And at some point, you will have the opportunity to do that for sure.
Awesome. Cool.
I think it is important for all creators to be able to have really, and this is the reason, because we started with Patreon, we moved away from Patreon. You need to be able to feel independent, especially when something is your main source of income. We saw the same thing with Tail Foundry, which suddenly they lost their ability to monetize through YouTube, and suddenly they almost like failed as a channel, like 200,000 people subscribers, and suddenly they had no income coming from YouTube. We are trying to find the best way to make this happen, and we will provide. This is not for us. I'm trying to be very clear. If we were going for the money there, we're trying to make a kill by using people subscriptions to take a percentage off of them, would have done it very earlier. That's not the question. We are trying to find the best ways possible for the artists to be paid the way they should be, and we will provide opportunities for people to make money with or without our system when it comes. And that is the truth. And that's why we have subscribers as a model in World Anvil, and that's why for the first time Sage allows you to have 1,000 subscribers, because with 1,000 subscribers you go to a publication level in terms of where you're distributing your content.
Did that help?
Yeah, no, that's perfect. I mean, one of the things that I've been thinking about for quite some time, obviously, I use Patreon and it's my main source of income. But it's I'm not really trying to say anything terrible about Patreon necessarily, but it is kind of bad that they seem to have a monopoly over the creative content sort of market in a way, like
the indie creative community. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And when they do screw up, like they did last year, and the backlash, and they can enforce changes upon their users, much like YouTube can. And YouTube at the moment is terrible for content creators and so on and so forth. I think it is better to have sort of unique, specific areas. Alternatives. Yeah,
that is very true. Talking about YouTube and alternatives, I know I don't know how controversial that is a subject, but I have heard lately the talk about creators moving from YouTube to Pornhub.
What?
Yes.
Because it gives better rates and it does not close accounts.
Holy crap.
So you're gonna see people using Pornhub as a creative outlet to have educational videos. I mean, I found that hilarious. Like the idea itself is like amazing, but this is where you're pushed if there are no other alternatives.
That's hilarious.
I think that diversification in any way possible is the way to go with that. You're absolutely right. And to be honest with you, Mark, I would say that especially when it comes to making money out of your content, up to a point, Patreon is a good way to start because it does not have so much of a huge requirement for you to do anything apart from creating an account. But after a while, thinking of going the route of getting a subscription service and pulling up a subscription page, this might be the way for you in many ways. I know it's harder to market, but if you are going like that, it might be a good solution.
No,
and
I
there are
don't.
services that do already.
No, I couldn't agree more. I think that is probably how most people think about it, because obviously Devon has the same thing. Devon Rue, she has her own sort of subscription service on her own website. So she has patrons on Patreon, and she also has her own sort of subscribers and things, which she has a lot more control over. So if anything does happen to Patreon, you can sort of move over there. And again, it's just about alternatives. And for me, it's something obviously I've been thinking about. So I wanted your thoughts on World Anvil and stuff.
So yes, the quick answer to that is yes, we are definitely thinking about solving a question about that, and we will try to do that as quickly as possible, as long as it's done right and it will serve you above everybody else. That is the thing. It is as simple as that.
Yeah, I mean, we've always been community-led and request-led, and a lot of our users are pro or want to go pro. So it's something that's been requested. It's something that we really want to do, and it's something we really want to get it right, because obviously the stakes are high on that one. It's not just like, oh, your world will now appear like this. It's, the minute that money is involved. Exactly.
It is the lifeblood of a creator, and that's the thing. And that it comes from a place of respect that we haven't done anything yet. Just that we don't want to do mistakes when somebody, for example, like you, Mark, you will entrust us with making sure that you can put food in your mouth, every first of the month or whatever this might be.
No, I understand that. I think it's again. I mean, like, I think one of the points of this chat and stuff, and when I was listening to you guys talking about it and getting started and going pro, and it's like, as long as you're creating content, whether or not it's on Patreon or on World Anvil, and somebody likes it, over time you're going to get more and more support, and that's how my experience in the sort of world of content creation has gone. So I think I think it's a lot less daunting for people to go from amateur content creation or writing or map making or something like that. If they know that they can see they put out some content, people like it, a small percentage of those people that like it then support them, and then it goes on and it goes on, and every month it grows and grows and grows. And I think that's how you get noticed, and how you can take your what might be a hobby or might be something that you enjoy, and eventually it becomes something that you can become pro at or be a pro.
I don't know, and I think we do have people here that were here in the very dawn of publications when it comes to RPGs. I know that the model used to be that you will write something, you will make a publication, and you post it in some stores, and you go to a convention to in fact show it. But I think that the shift we've seen nowadays, with essentially the world becoming a much bigger village, is that you cannot go to conventions to approach the same percentage of people you would, because as simple as that, the pond is much bigger, and there is a lot more competition for who's going to get the stake. And
now we opened up now to the audience to ask questions.
Oh, okay.
Which I think really...
Which goes till when? 1?
Usually about 12. It's usually 2 hours.
Oh.
It's just a really good episode today.
Hi, Tinker and Rachel.
Hey, guys. All unmuted, Eric.
We're getting inside live from Tinker's place.
That shouldn't have happened.
I should have told you just let it keep going.
No.
Talk
Oh, well, I'm on my phone. I'm going to kill it. But listen, Great show, man. I've been listening with Rachel all morning, so you guys top notch, really good. I learned a lot. That's saying a lot. So
We got a question here from the Pox Box. Have any of you ever considered RPGs as a service instead of publishing products?
Well, we definitely did. That's what we're trying to do.
That's
That
what
is
we-
the idea.
I mean, I think,
I
when you
think-
look at a lot of the stuff like what Watsy's been doing with D&D Beyond and other things, even things like Roll20, that's role-playing games as a service that you're going to recurringly pay for, and then that potentially expire.
I think the difference between it is true. Roll20 is in fact a service that it's kind of like paying for your table, like in a store. That's how I could say it. In reality, I think that what we're trying to do with Gold Anvil say you don't have to buy the book. You can buy a subscription, and in many ways that means that the original price will be much lower, which means it has a very small, a very easier entry level, and you can try and pick and choose what you want by just dipping in. But on the other hand, it helps because the creator will have the ability to have a continuous flow of money from the people who are supporting his work. So knowing that you buy not the book, but you buy effectively the rights to read through the content for a specific amount of time is the heart of a subscription service, and it has a pros and cons. It is, I don't know if you've read, guys, any studies on that, but there is a huge shift in terms of how people understand the housing market. That it used to be that, the American dream was the house with at the suburbs or whatever this was for different locations. But now the dream is to be able to travel around the world and change houses all the time by paying rent. Rent is a subscription, literally. It is your life in a subscription.
Rent
And
to
I
me
think
is
that-
not having to shovel snow. That's what rent to me means. I don't have to shovel snow. I don't. No mowing the lawns. The toilets clogged up. I call the landlord. Nothing. That's what renting is to me. But I get the traveling the world bit. Yeah.
It is a
I
matter
think
of
the model for what Andrew and some of the others talk about is probably publishing houses giving access to. We've seen a couple of these pop up this year, giving access to the setting and you being able to publish under those settings. That is a service, quote unquote. I forget the names of them, but Tinkar's done a couple of the podcasts on. I think there's at least 2 that have opened up with that model this year.
Can you explain the model again, please? I mean, I'm trying to understand.
Well, basically, okay, let's say take Forgotten Realms. So I'm a fan. I want to publish something on Forgotten Realms. I go to WotC. They give me a license. I'm then able to write under Forgotten Realms, and it's published under their name. And they get a percentage, and whoever they distribute it through gets a percentage, and then you, the creator, get a percentage of that sale.
That is not
basically
exactly
DM's
subscription,
Guild, right?
though.
Yeah, because I think what we're looking toward here is getting rid of the distribution model entirely, and going to subscribing directly to the content producer and getting that content as a service. Kind of like you don't go to a third party to get Adobe Creative Cloud. You go directly to Adobe. You pay a subscription fee. You get to use the software for a specific period of time. Are we looking at maybe a future where the RPG manuals are the content and you pay a certain amount to have access to those books for a certain period of time, with the understanding that any errata or version updates or whatever will be rolled in to what you have access to during your subscription period?
We have, in fact, 2 worlds right now that I'm aware of involved exactly that.
I think we're on the verge of that. I think that is going to become the model to use going forward. It'll probably evolve here and there.
Yeah. And sorry, just to clarify, in Gold Anvil, people don't just put their walls, they also put their systems. And that's why I said we have 2 walls that actually do exactly that. We have people who, in fact, give, as a subscription, access to their rule sets. and access to their classes, and of course the erratas without them having to pay essentially to buy another book or anything like that, because they just update the log of what they've done on this week, and people can get access to that.
Anybody know why, since we're talking about Worlds and Lost Worlds and Wizards of the Coast, why the hell they won't release Greyhawk in some fashion? There's a rabid fanboy base of people out there who would want this to happen so bad. I think Joe Block was giving away "Make Greyhawk Great Again" hats, selling them at a convention. My God, I mean, there's just people out there who really want this thing. Why do they sit on their asses? Anybody know?
I've been saying the same thing about Mystara. They should just open it up, let it come back. Or any setting like Greyhawk. I think Greyhawk has a bigger fan base, or Spelljammer, or Planescape. But there's these things out there people are craving and wanting, but somebody's got the keys on the lock.
Yeah, we got a problem with that with Crimson Skies, which is a diesel punk thing that FASA did, 30 years ago. We get people coming up to us at conventions. Every convention we go to, we got people coming up to us going, "Why are you not bringing Crimson Skies back out?" And the problem is we got this one guy who's got a padlock on the IP, and we keep offering to throw money at him to unlock it and release his interest in it, and he doesn't until this one person releases their claim on that IP. Nobody else can do anything with it, and so it only takes one person to put a lock on an IP and prevent it from being opened up. With Mystara, you have to wonder who out there has a share in the rights to that property, and maybe holding on to it for some reason.
Right. I mean, that's an odd one, too, because you have people from old TSR, and then you got WotC who bought out TSR or took over, whatever. So it's just a big legal issue, and then you have a whole slew of different authors and how things were done legally by signing contracts here and there. It's a nightmare, and because of that, it's bundled up and tucked away under a corner that I'll probably never see, but I'll continue playing anyway.
Yeah. I still bring out my old worn out After the Ashes box set, is beat the crap, and I bring stuff out for it, and I use it as stuff for my campaign now, but I would love to have an update to it. What I think that happened with WotC was when they took over, they made, they had all that Magic the Gathering money, and he just bought out everybody's, whatever rights you may have, we just bought it. Here you go. Take your money, and you give us every right you may think you have, even if you don't know you had it now. I thought that's what they did. So I don't think it may be another rights thing with them. I think it's just where they want to go with it thing.
Right. It got, in Mystara in particular, later publications didn't do very well, so they kind of shelved it on the 2E era. But they just dropped the line, and a lot of these things they just dropped. They're slowly bringing some of them back. It's good to see. But they have, last I counted, 24 settings, and only 5 are active by them, or allowed to be active.
Wow.
Well, it's a matter of also cash flow, right? These people have to pay people in order to make things. And if you have a company, you have a certain amount of employees you can hire at any given point in order to be able to publish. And some things will be more profitable than others, so you can go with those. It is as simple as that.
Right. It is a business at the end of the day, and money is money. I get that.
Well, that goes back to what you're saying before, which is what brought it to my mind just now, was open up the world for people to make their own crap in it. And it would be a joint collaborative effort amongst all the super fans of the world, and pay, they would take a piece of whatever people make, and they get a little bit on their end, but not having to do anything except giving the right to write stuff in Greyhawk.
Something similar to what was happened with Birthright. Is that am I wrong to say that they opened up Birthright and it was given to a third person to manage?
I'm not sure on the whole Birthright thing. Last I knew, WotC still owned it, but that may have changed. I can go to their page. Let's see.
So the guy that's in charge of the current sort of D&D release schedule, Mike Miles, he said in an interview he said that they're only interested in releasing 1 to 2 sort of major books a year, and a lot of people are a bit annoyed by that. But I think his rationale was basically they did when they did the 5e playtest, they did a big sort of questionnaire thing, and they based it off that, and that might be one of the reasons why they're only focusing on expanding players' ability to play adventures rather than establishing new sort of campaign worlds or settings, which obviously they have a large amount to draw from, but they're probably more focused on the actual adventures.
If you think
campaigns.
it from a business perspective as well, it is cheaper to create 2 books and make sure, or X amount of books, that you are sure that the people who are your main audience has the money to buy in a given amount of time. So effectively, if TSR or like Hasbro or whoever else went out and said, okay, how much money our average consumer can give in a year in books? And people will say, for example, they know like $100 in average, which means that they can do 2 books, which is fine. They can buy 2 books, so let's make 2 books and make them really good so people will buy them. The expenses will be very low because you only have to pay for 2 books and not more than those books, and you'll make sure that your marketing department shouts the hell out of them one way or another for people to buy them. As simple as that. It is a matter of production. It's a matter of how much money is out there to be given and how much money you need to put into something to get money out. Sadly, it is true. And that's how it works with all big companies, because they have to give answers to Hasbro. How much money you've made, how much money you spent every year, right?
Yeah, Pex, what are you and Stylen talking about there? That looks
Who
interesting.
buys what? The DMs buy the game books and everything else, but the players and the DMs buy the core books, and the core books sell the most. So the model seems upside down from consuming money. I mean, you used to have those splat books in the 3.0 era, and they made a lot of money off that.
Oh yeah, big time. But some of them suck bad though. But they still make money.
We still bought them. Still bought them at the end of the day.
Can't say as I want them as so much as I found PDFs on my computer that just appeared miraculously someday.
We tend to not. It's a matter of the paradigm shift we talked about. The market changed. We or whoever was there 30 years ago are people who are so in love with the hobby and they would spend literally every money they had into buying books. At this point, this is not how it works. It is one more hobby for people to have, and they can give a certain amount of money because most of them are kids. The percentage of population right now that plays RPGs are underneath the age of 22. And that's statistics that were coming out like last year, as far as I remember. So you're talking about a very specific amount of money that can be spent. It's not like us that will go out and say, "Oh my God, I want to buy the whole of Birthright," or "I want to buy everything from 3.5 edition," or everything that Pathfinder got out.
That's a really good point. Good point, man. I remember I forget the kid days because I started in '84 when I was 14, right? And so I do remember hunkering down in the corner of Walden Books, surreptitiously slitting the adventures open and reading them to see if I wanted to buy it because I only had $9 to my name or whatever from the paper route, and just trying to devour all the Dragon magazines and memorize it as much as I could because I couldn't afford to buy a module and Dragon magazine, right? So
exactly.
You're right. You forget about those days, and now you got money, and you think, "Oh shit, why can't they just put more out? I'll buy it."
We are a very small percentage.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And now that the font is so big, the percentage is massive. Like if you thought that the kids back in the days were like us and another 30,000 people, now the kids are 5 million people, and we are still 30,000. So it's like the numbers are so skewed. That's why the industry changed.
And books now, they're what, $50 a pop? I mean, that's some kid's birthday present, quote unquote.
Yeah.
I mean, they're big money for small pockets.
Not to mention the fact that we come from a world that free is the status quo.
Yeah.
I mean, it might not be free, but in the mind of people, it's free. Facebook is free. Twitter is free. Well, they're not really. They are buying and selling your information. That's a different thing, but you don't see that. You see how much money goes out of your pocket. And if they give you things for free, you want things for free. And that's a big thing we have to deal with World Anvil as well, because our lower subscription
$3
is $3. And people will still complain. It's $3 a month, like it's a coffee.
Yeah, and this is our life. This is what we work on all the time. Like, this is what we wake up and think about and go to bed and think about. But still, because people expect to get things for free, they think, well, why should I pay for something? Despite the fact that we're working and not selling their information, these things. Yeah, I mean, it's a very, very different market. It's a very, very different community, and the expectations are so different from what they were in the past, I think.
Right, and I added up the money the other day. If you wanted a physical set, and this is for a virtual tabletop player, if you wanted a physical set, and then the 5e, the D&D Beyond set, and then for your VTT, you're looking at another set on the Roll20 side, or Fantasy Grounds, or whatever your VTT may be. So you're buying 3 sets of the same thing to have access to different kinds of ways, which is astounding. Yeah, you're looking at, if you bought everything, over $1,000 for getting them all 3.
It's just ludicrous. And again, I think this is an area that the practices still have to catch up with the needs of the players, in that people don't want to buy things 3 times. We need to figure out how to fix that. And again, with World Anvil, that's one of the ways we try to do that, is that in the same way that people release a PDF, they can release a code for their World Anvil world as part of that, and then they can have all the interactive experience of, learning the world and all of that. I don't want to talk anymore about World Anvil, but it's something we're aware of. It's something all of us are aware of, and it needs to get fixed.
And it's something that goes back to what Kayora was saying as well. Like, I find the idea that I bought a book, for example, like a player's handbook, a physical product, and now I have to go, for example, in D&D Beyond and buy it again in order to use it, or all to enter.
Buy the material again.
It makes no sense to me, because for me the transaction was about me buying the information in the book. And now I have to buy it 3 times, and it makes no sense. Like, sorry, I might be short-sighted, but that makes no sense in my mind. Like, I don't understand why people are okay with it. Of course, you're gonna say that, the players won't buy the books, but the players want the characters, for example, in D&D Beyond, so they will buy in D&D Beyond the parts of the characters they want. Okay, fair enough. That is okay. But for a storyteller, for example, this is a completely different issue, because a storyteller cannot do that. They can buy like 3 times the same thing, especially if it costs $50 each.
Well, in the defense of what the Poxbox is saying here in chat, there's a lot of work that goes in getting the art out of there, making tokens. That isn't an added thing you don't get with buying the physical product. And same with D&D Beyond. Some search things are added, like creating character sheets. So they're adding a new service. I'm not saying there aren't benefits for going whichever way you want, but you're still, at the end of the day, buying the same thing 3 times. You're just getting a bell or whistle for which one you go with.
I would be okay to buy the token separately, and I would say, of course, you have to pay the artist, but they're not asking you to buy the tokens. They're asking you to buy the player's handbook.
I think the only reason that more people aren't angry about this is because there's 3 separate camps of players. You have the one side where, everybody plays around the table, and they've already bought the books, so they don't even know about D&D Beyond. They don't care. They're not going to buy anything on D&D Beyond, and then it doesn't matter.
That's me. I don't know what the hell it is.
Another large camp of players who only play online, who use D&D Beyond and don't have friends nearby that are only going to use the materials on there. And then you have the third group, which is using both, and those are the people that get screwed over. But that's only one of those groups is the ones that are going to be complaining about D&D Beyond.
Fair point.
At the end of the day, they are going to do it because they can get away with it.
Yeah,
more
exactly.
money.
No, it is very true.
So what questions do we have? If I missed it, if you typed it in chat, just type it again. We'll get it read out here.
I'm not even sure what D&D Beyond is, actually. You guys are talking about it. I should look it up. But I do the basic game, and then I'm trying to get into Roll20 now again, and trying, hexographer and all that kind of stuff. Should I be worried about D&D Beyond? Should I need what is it? What do I need from it?
Well, it is a way to manage your player character sheets online and in extend your campaign. But World Anvil is better at that. Don't say I said that.
Okay.
I'd say if you're a player, D&D Beyond is a win for you because you'll be busy making a bajillion characters. If you're the DM, it is an information lookup, but if you're going the Roll20 route, get the Roll20 virtual set. That'll serve you better. If you're a DM and a player, well, you're looking... You can make your whatever choice you want to make. I'm not going to endorse whatever. But those are the options.
I haven't played that much with D&D Beyond. Does it serve other systems, or is it just D&D centric?
Just D&D. Absolutely.
It's just D&D, Watsy.
Oh, how disappointing. Okay, that's sad. I don't know. I mean, with the rise of so many cool systems, I feel like it would be great to introduce them to more players and stuff. That's all.
Well, D&D Beyond is owned by Wizards of the Coast.
Sure,
so-
exactly. So they want to.
Yeah, that's
A
not their
nice
goal.
walled garden.
Roll20 has lots of different. Roll20 has support for lots of different systems.
Yeah.
And people can create
Yeah.
their own. I think you have to have certain levels of access before you can create your own stuff. But I know you can create things for systems that aren't supported. Obviously, D&D Beyond is just for D&D. It's Watsy's homegrown.
Yeah.
So
That's what
Roll20
actually-
is also opening up their developer tools. FASA is currently in talks with them. We just put up the official FASA Earth Dawn character sheet on Roll20 that's got a little bit of proprietary content in it to help to make it work better. We're working on migrating the player's guide for Earth Dawn to Roll20 so that, like the D&D books, you can buy the compendium and it'll link in to the character sheets and provide all the content for the GM to be able to use and so forth. To address an earlier point from World Anvil, we're looking at making the tokens and art collection a separate packet.
And that's
So
a beautiful way of doing it. Yeah, that's how it
Yeah.
should be.
Yeah, so your GM can buy the compendium and then permit the players to it, so that their character sheets will link to it and pull the information in for the session, and then you've got a separate purchase for the map tokens and so forth. But yeah, Roll20 is something that we're very, very interested in.
Right, I think VTT as a whole, even past Roll20 10 years from now, I think that model for them will continue to be around, honestly. You're going to be buying a digital asset and maybe a physical asset, depending on what you're doing.
As we said, sadly, the world is changing and people don't live as close as we would like anymore. And that is the problem where VDTs, that's why VDTs exist. Because even in our generation, people go away, they have families, they go to different states or different countries, and we would like to keep on playing. And for people who got introduced in RPGs, we were in a meeting with Satine Phoenix and Ruti Rothenberg the other day, and one of the things that we discussed was the fact that the new people find RPGs through the internet.
Yeah.
Which means that most of their friends are essentially on the internet. They don't have friends on their area playing RPGs, and that is the reason that most of them play online, because that's the way they know that's how RPGs are played. And VDT,
Absolutely.
yeah.
And it used to be the conventions were, before online, conventions were the thing to go with, like the RPGA League or whatever organized play you were doing, or a pickup game at one of those before the internet. If you lived in an isolated place, you could go to one of these, you could play, you could do whatever. But now with the advent of the internet, you don't have to spend the travel money, the hotel money, all that kind of stuff to do that with the internet. Pay your $10 a month if you're using Roll20, or your $60 one-time fee at like D20 Pro or Fantasy Ground type deal for a license, and you're good to go.
I'm not even using any of those. I'm running 3 different campaigns on Discord. I've got Earth Dawn. I've got 2 campaigns of 1879. They're all running on the FASA Discord server.
That's a very good way of doing it as well. And that is where world building can actually help people, because as with Roll20, we also allow for people to create their own character sheets for any game they have. And now we're creating an integration that simply enough you can invite into your server Forge Master, which is our Discord bot. And the Discord bot can give you information from your world and make rolls based on your system in Discord without having to have DDD.
That's
Yeah,
very
so
cool.
you don't even have to have the tab open in order to get
Yeah,
your world
exactly.
information.
Things are changing all the time, and we're doing our best to essentially pick up, all of us, I think, like publishers, creators,
Players,
players,
DMs, yeah.
and applications.
I'm
It's
still
nice.
holding out for the holodeck, so I don't even need real people anymore.
What was
Kidding.
that?
I'm still holding out for the holodeck, so I won't need people anymore.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I come from a bit of a theatre background, so for me, there's nothing like that experience of being around the table and doing a group improvisation, essentially. I love it. I love the character creation. I love all of that stuff. But if you've only ever played online, you don't even know what you're... Do you know what I mean?
I know. I think there's something to the books, too, in the sense that so I play, like I said, I run a few games, and one of the games is with a bunch of younger players. I mean, like 20s and around that area in age. And for the longest time, we've been playing almost a year now. They just didn't have a book. They didn't have a player's handbook. I'm like, well, what the hell do you do? They look it all up online, and they developed a character like that and this and that, and electronic sheets and all this. And I'm like, well, what do you sit on the couch with at night with with a cup of tea or a beer or whatever, and what do you read? Well, nothing. They don't have that. And like, Jesus Christ, it's just amazing to me. You know what I mean? Because I was such a foreign experience to me growing up. Some of my best memories were like laying on the ground, on the floor, or outside, or whatever, under a tree, reading the player's handbook.
And the smell of books, right?
Yeah. Oh, remember the Player's Handbook First Edition? You guys remember the smell of that book? You know, that was
I
fantastic.
still have it, and it's stinky.
Yeah.
That new car smell.
My filthy hands so many times.
Yep. I just a strange, different. They're growing up with a different experience, and that's why we're getting Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles as a character race. You know what I mean? But hey, it's their influence, so that's what they want to see.
Yeah, I mean, it's a
well,
game as well. And I think that there is space for all of it, but it's just understanding those differences and figuring out how to provide stuff that works for everyone.
Yeah,
And
it's
that
been
everyone can
challenges.
leverage in their own way. Sorry, Joe, go ahead.
I was just say that's been my challenge as a DM, is to help them understand different things that they may not be getting because they're not seeing the book, and help me. The challenge for me is understand what their experience and background and influences are. You know what I mean? So that I can make something that's kind of fun for them, because they don't want to maybe do the half elf or the elf and the dwarf and the halfling. You know what I mean? They want to do their stupid Ninja Turtle thing, or their talking cat that only mimics things, or whatever the hell that bird thing. Oh my! Anyway.
Yeah, I mean, we had a young player in one of our groups that had just started playing Assassin's Creed, and so made literally an Assassin's Creed character, and that was absolutely fine. He had a whale of a time because he was enjoying references that were relevant to him.
Yes, that's a big deal. I mean, we all sit around the table and we break off into what I call a tangent, and we just start talking about something that triggers, or somebody says something at the table that triggers a tangent, and next thing you know, we're talking about the holodeck or Star Trek, The Next Generation, the original one, and one of our players, a young girl, started the old guy group. It's one of my friend Pete. He's like in his 40s. His daughter plays with us now. She's 16, and she finally watched Monty Python's Holy Grail. You know what I mean? She finally sees what we're talking about now. Next, we got to get her to watch Conan and maybe Highlander so she can follow some more of our old guy references. But it's a matter of us now understanding her references too. And just trying to fit that in.
Right. I mean, it's just a matter of the time period. I mean, back in the day, it was your Captain Kirk, your Luke Skywalker. Today, it's your Buffy the Vampire Slayer, or I don't know, whatever a Twilight character's called.
Dude,
Fucking
Duffy
vampire.
is like so 10 years ago.
Yeah, I know. I'm getting to my own age here.
You know, my youngest has just gotten over the idea of Homestuck.
Of what, sorry?
Homestuck. Don't
want to
ask me
know.
to explain it, please. It makes my head hurt.
Okay.
I'll give you a
But-
crayon and a piece of paper, and that's the only method I'll accept from you from the explanation.
What I would say is that I wouldn't be very surprised if within the next year we see reproductions of things like how do you call the science fiction series we saw on Netflix? The one about the post-apocalyptic Earth with elves and magic and
Shannara.
Chronicles, for example, becoming an RPG if they're not already, and people wanting to play these characters, or for example Sabrina and play the warlock or the witch kind of thing.
Or Wheel of Time, which Amazon is bringing out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Funny thing is, Shannara is such an old
Game
book
of Thrones?
from the late
Nobody?
70s.
Game of Thrones already, I think that's why they didn't put it in there. I mean, I think everybody knows that Game of Thrones is still an RPG game. I don't think the implementation was great. That's why people don't are crazy about it. But yeah, of course.
Yeah, and as the door is opened for these things that were published previously and are coming back, I think that's gonna be references that we can all enjoy together, if you see what I mean. Which is gonna be nice.
Yeah. Yeah, just a matter of having the time to learn the references. We learn our reference points because we had nothing else to do, right? We were low employed.
I was about to say. I was about to say that you said that you sit down with a book and you read over the evening, which is great. And that's how you learn references. The difference is that back in the day, you were more open things, and now you are not because you are here things that you already love. That's how it works, essentially.
Yeah.
They do the same thing. They might not be reading a book. They might be watching a TV series on Netflix or having an audiobook in their ears or their ears. I don't like this divide of us and them, but it's true. I mean, let's say that people who were born 40 years ago or 50 years ago or 60 years ago are different from people who were born 20 years ago because we sincerely, literally saw and read different things. And that's how we absorb information.
In response to Urpel's question here, I don't think they're not going to have fun. They just may not get some of the jokes or some of the inside things that everybody else would be familiar with. You had everybody that watched, I don't know, Space Above and Beyond. It's probably a series I know because I watched it in the 90s. There's no way in hell this person born in 2000 is going to know what that is.
Different cultural references, different touchstones. Matter of being able to tie it into something that somebody's already bought into or at least is familiar with. Humans as adults don't learn new stuff very well unless they can fit it into an existing context. There's a certain age where you just stop building new structures in your head.
Yeah.
And everything has to fit into an existing one.
You don't stop, but definitely becomes harder, and humans are made to do things the easiest way possible.
Yeah, I mean, Andrew's right about mental plasticity.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
Yeah, we're lazy bastards.
Yeah, and we lose the ability to change the shapes of the containers that the information sits in, is the best way to explain that. If you see what I mean. Like, we can still absorb the information, but we understand it through structures that we've already created. Andrew's exactly right about that.
Yeah.
All right, audience members, any last questions for our host here? I mean, we can keep talking all day if you guys want, but
I have a stream at 8 o'clock.
You're busy.
You can all come and join us. We're talking about world building. Wait, natural laws and supernatural laws. Basically, world building plot holes.
And we have Vancano from World Building School with us talking about it.
Can I get the link?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It will be.
Is it here in Discord?
It will be
Where?
on Twitch. We're going live effectively, and then we're recording the audio and podcast and the video from it.
Okay.
So in hours time, what is 20 hours GMT?
I'm
How
trying to
many
figure
hours
out
from now?
if it's 2.5
Is
hours.
in 2.5 hours.
Just enough time to get breakfast in.
Oh yeah.
Oh,
Last questions, guys. Any last questions? Yes, thank you guys for coming in. This was fantastic. We'll get the recording out maybe tomorrow or the day after. If you came in late, or I'll send you a copy personally as well for our host here.
I'll
Yeah,
try to
thanks,
get
guys. It
the
was-
file out to you this afternoon if I can.
That'd be awesome, Todd. Thank you. Todd, he is the man
Pleasure.
behind the scenes. He records all our shows here on the Breakfast Club. He works harder than the rest of us.
thank you, Todd, and thank you, Pex, for having us all on.
Yeah, thanks so much.
It
This has
was a
been really
pleasure.
interesting and really fun.
Yeah, definitely. I wasn't sure what this was going to be.
Same here.
This has been really, really cool. Especially this early in the morning. I'm barely functional, but it's been really cool. And I'm East Coast, so
That's when we get the honest answers out of you guys when you're not really awake.
Sorry, passing motorbike.
All right, guys. Well, take care. Thank you very much.
Yep. Have a great rest of your Sunday.
Thanks.
Cheers,
Enjoy your day,
guys.
guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Cheers.